And yeah, little things become big things. Certain musicians I've worked with fart a lot. And it sounds funny now, but it becomes not funny on tour. But then you're like, well, I don't want to quit the band because this guy farts all the time. But 50 days into a tour, you start thinking about it.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the DP podcast. This next guest, he's a friend of mine. He's actually the first guy I met when I started going to Musicians Institute. He's an amazing bass player, a great friend, and just one of the nicest people I've ever met. He's from London, Ontario, Canada. So maybe that's why he's so nice, because he's Canadian. I don't know, something in the water. But this guy, I've honestly really seen this guy move up in the world as a musician. I remember when we were going to music school, there was one point where he needed a place to stay, didn't have anywhere to go, and I was already living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Hollywood, on Orange in Hollywood. And I had 4 other roommates, so we were 5 total in a 2-bedroom apartment. And this friend asked me for a place to stay, and I said, "Man, you're friends with all of my roommates. Like, you're more than welcome to stay with us." And so he lived in the living room in a little corner of our apartment for like 2 months and never complained. He was always very grateful. And now he has his own place, nice car, has a beautiful girl. He's open for bands like Mr. Big. He's toured around the world with bands like Warbringer. He's released studio albums with bands. He's done all kinds of stuff. And when I was going to Musicians Institute, this guy was always hustling. This guy always had a gig. He always had something going down while going to music school and doing above and beyond there. Like, this guy always gives 100%. Like, I asked him in the podcast, like, do you have that voice in your head, that tells you, like, I don't want to do this? Because he's always game for whatever. And, he's human. He does have that, but, he overcomes it. And that's very motivational to me. And the opening song for this is also a Rush song. This guest also loves Rush and was also a big influence for me when it came to Rush. But the song is Limelight by Rush, if you guys want to check it out. So without further ado, let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the DB podcast. Joining me today is a good friend, longtime friend actually. Met him at a music school. Musicians Institute, and currently plays bass for Warbringer. He's open for multiple big bands such as Mr. Big, and continues to play today. I'd like to introduce my good friend Chase Bryant. What's up, man? What's good with you?
What's up, Daniel? Thanks for having me,
man. The music's still going, but don't trip. It's gonna end soon.
Oh, good. I could listen to this all day.
But so, bro, you grew up in London, Ontario, in Canada, right?
Yep.
What was that like, man? Like, growing up in a small town?
It was interesting. There's a lot of good growing up in a town like London, and there's some things that are, sometimes like a small-minded community can have a certain effect on the way you perceive things, and then once you leave, you realize how different it is outside of that. But that's a coming of age, I think, for anybody.
How so? How does that affect your music outlook? Going from a small town, because you're a pretty technical bass player, and what a lot of people don't know, they think that people just listen to what's out there, and there's a lot of stuff that musicians listen to specifically. And to get to that music, you need to meet other musicians that listen to that music. So it's like musicians, music, and for you to find this type of stuff and really expand your playing, like how does that come about, going in a small town and having a certain perception on what music is?
Well, your influences obviously have a big effect on that. And then as you grow as a musician and you're looking for other musicians to play with, and you notice that nobody's really into the same stuff as you or trying to play music the same way. And then you go out and you find these players are all over the place, just living in other places. It really pushes you to go out and find them. And that's why I went to music school and moved to Windsor, Ontario, which is about 2 hours from my hometown. To find these musicians, to learn about music, I just knew that it would happen naturally, and it did. And then that led me eventually moving to LA, which is where I met you at Musicians Institute. And studied contemporary music, and just moving to another country, another city, especially like Los Angeles, you're going to be exposed to so many different styles of music and musicians and environments that you would never see in small town Southern Ontario. And yeah.
So, what was the music scene like out there? But before that, like, what turned you to playing bass? Because for everybody that doesn't know, you play bass, you know?
Yeah. I was in high school, and my friend played guitar, and because he played guitar, I was like, well, I have to play bass. But I didn't really know what bass was.
Were you already listening to music at this point?
I was listening to music. I was listening to Deftones and Korn and like Bush X. And
Super tight, like, of your era music.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I liked heavy music. Everybody I went to high school with was kind of into like, I don't know, like rap, Ja Rule and stuff like that, which I appreciate a lot more now, but at the time wasn't into, and I'd get made fun of because of the music I listened to, so it made me want to listen to it more. And
yeah, because back like in high school or even in most of society, like the music you listen to is like your clique. It's not like, hey, it's this free form thing that anybody can love. Like back in the day.
Yeah, my high school, the kids that listened to Korn got made fun of for sure. But I heard Fieldy play a bass line, and I didn't even, because it was so obvious and such a distinct sound, I knew that wasn't guitar, and I realized that I wanted to do that. And my friend had a bass that he was selling at the grocery store I worked at, and I bought that from him. Tried to play Korn, but I didn't know what down tuning was, so I eventually started. My friend that played guitar played Blink-182, and that was easy to play, and it was in standard, and I started picking that up pretty quick, which gave me confidence. We played at a talent show in high school, and it just led me down the road of more playing and more learning, and how much music had been a great impact in my life. All of a sudden, I was like playing at the talent show in front of all the people that would make fun of me for listening to Korn, but it was because of those bands and those experiences that
shaped who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what people don't see is the road, you know, the hours of practice you put in. They just see the final product when it comes to music. But then when you moved and you went to music school, it was like for classical bass, upright bass, right?
Yeah.
Which is totally different from that type of metal playing. You know, it's not even the same type of bass. It's the big upright, like what you see in jazz or classical music. You know, if people don't know what it looks like. It's a big freaking hunk of wood.
And that was just, again, like straight from that path of playing with my friends in high school. I didn't listen to punk at first. I was into the new metal, and then learning bass, I got into Blink-182, which led me to NoFX, and then NoFX had guitar solos, and all of a sudden I realized I love guitar solos, and that eventually led me to Metallica, which brought me back into metal full circle, and then I discovered who Megadeth were, and they were like a little more technical in prog, and then I had my whole classic rock phase, and all of these bands and all of these influences like really shaped my direction in music, which eventually got me into Dream Theater. And Dream Theater was the first band that...
What about Rush?
Rush was huge in my classic rock phase as well. Yeah, thanks. Can't skip over Rush. They pushed me in a progressive direction, which led me to Dream Theater. And that was the first band that I like couldn't learn their material or figure it out or understand how they got that good. And someone was like, oh, they went to school for music. And I was like, you can do that? I thought that... I didn't even know that was a career choice, honestly. And probably for good reason now that I'm like trying to pursue one.
Yeah.
So I told my music teacher in high school, I'm like, yeah, this band went to music school. I want to go to music school. And he's like, well, you have to play classical. And that's not what they went to Berkeley. I didn't understand at the time. So I got an upright bass.
And Berkeley is considered like a jazz contemporary school.
Yeah, jazz contemporary, non-classical. People are playing electric instruments more than orchestral. My friends went to Windsor. I moved there. I met so many more like-minded musicians and people that really inspired me and were on the same page. And then after I graduated, I realized that I really had no place in the orchestra as much as I loved it. And
get a little closer to the mic.
As much as I loved playing in the orchestra, I realized it wasn't a career path for me. And some things happened in my life, and it led me to move to Los Angeles and go to MI, so I could actually study contemporary and meet musicians out here and start my American life. But
So what year was it when you like got into music in high school and started actually playing bass?
I was 15, and that would have been 2003 or
Okay.
4.
And then music at MI we met 2012.
Yep.
Yeah. And funny enough, you were the first person I met. We were both outside MI, like trying to get in so we could practice, but we didn't know that they closed the weekend before they opened again for the quarter.
The very first guy I've met in Hollywood walking up to the MI school was you.
Yeah, it was funny. Like, sure enough. And you were with Joe?
Yep.
Yeah, you're a friend, an awesome drummer.
Amazing drummer for Oni, a progressive band that we played in for between, I can't remember what years.
We can get into that. So, I mean, since you went to 2 different music schools, which you were one of the only people I knew that had done that, and especially going from classical into this was more contemporary, not in jazz, but just contemporary in general school. Like, what was your perception of what classical school was and what you got, and same thing with MI and how it compares, like, did you think, oh, this was worth it, the money you put in or whatever, or, what was it? What were the classes like to you?
Well, yeah, that's a very interesting question. Both were totally worth it, but in completely different ways. The classical education were in Southern Ontario and most schools, I believe, across North America and in the world, you have to meet a certain standard or you're not going to get in. You've got to keep your grades at a certain level or you're going to be kicked out. And you really got to put the work in. There's no, they're not going to accept it any other way. And the classical education was like very thorough and you had to meet certain requirements. And then I thought that MI was going to be the same way. And so I took a week off of work. I worked up my audition video to that highest standard I could. I still didn't think it was good enough.
What'd you play on it?
I played a section from the Dance Fraternity by Dream Theater, Bach, Cello Suite 5, Gavotte, and some slap tap thing that I can't remember what it was.
Just something you used to always play, probably.
Yeah, it was cool and flashy and whatever. And I thought, I'm like, I'm not going to get in. This school is so prestigious. This is where Paul Gilbert.
The mic a little bit?
This is where Paul Gilbert went, which he's the main reason that I knew about the school. And it is an amazing school, and I'm so grateful that it's there. And it gave me everything that I was looking for. But when I got there, I realized that there was students that were just starting out, and that was really like any level could enter, and that. It didn't really well, I mean, you need to pass and keep they encourage you to keep your grades up, but they just kind of need to get people in the door a little bit.
Yeah, they're there for the paycheck a little bit. If
yeah,
I can interject a little bit.
It's Hollywood Boulevard has this, some days it felt like Ripley's Believe It or Not museum, and other days it felt like a real jazz school. However, I met the people that I was looking for. I got the connections I was trying to make, and my chops went up significantly, and those are all the reasons I went to MI. So if you look and you pursue what you went there for, you will get it. But it's not like classical school where
it's the cream of the crop type.
If you don't keep it up, then you're out the door.
Yeah, I guess something I'd like to add to the MI thing, just having gone there too with you, starting at the same time, was that something I noticed was all the foreign exchange students that came, like you or other friends of ours. They were always really good players, and they always worked the hardest. Even if they weren't as good as some other players, they always worked the hardest because they were giving up the most, and they had the most to give. And they were always older, so they were like giving up a lot to be there. Family, money, jobs, whatever it may be, girlfriends, a life. And meanwhile, a lot of the American kids were straight out of high school, like myself, and weren't the best player. They weren't, like 99% of the time, they weren't the best player in the room. The American students were. They were just like there were a lot of rich kids, a lot of kids that like their parents were like Beverly Hills kids, like you were saying earlier, and it was really interesting to see the divide. I mean, there were definitely really good American students, but most of them were there to keep the lights on. Yeah, I mean that's just something I noticed.
But yeah, ultimately, the reason I went, that school helped me get all the things that I came here to do, and but you gotta it's all on you, just like Hollywood
Right.
and LA. So and the music business,
Right.
It kind of teaches that lesson, but you got to learn it for yourself. They're
Right.
not, obviously they're not going to sell that.
Yeah, and a lot of those kids end up dropping out or not staying through the whole program. And what was I going to add to what you were saying? Yeah, you know how you're saying how it's worth it. It's like, and how, it's the work you put in, because it's like, hey, you were always doing all these live performance workshops. You did the Carl Schroeder class, which was like, I did that too, which was this amazing jazz pianist who did this jazz class, who played for like Sarah Vaughan and multiple other jazz artists. And he had like the best class at the school. He's not there anymore, unfortunately, but like what he would teach you was invaluable, like
The Schroeder portion of the education was by far the most valuable.
And it's not even required.
Yeah, and it was optional, which was a shame.
Yeah, I mean, it's free.
Yeah.
And, you could go to see Scott Henderson do an open counseling, or like Jeff Berlin, or...
Yeah, I saw a lot of amazing open counsels.
Hadrian Farrow.
And, artists that completely influenced me and changed the way I'm trying to play today.
Yeah, it's like, is it worth it? It's hard to say, because the experience is like, if you're someone that's going to give 110%, then it's worth it.
If you're an international student, I think it's definitely worth it. If you're like going all in, if you're unsure, then it's not. And if you live out here already, I think that you can get a lot of the opportunities and advantages without having to go to a school like that. But it's certainly worth it for me.
I completely agree with what you said. Yeah. And so what was, I mean, we met there. We met there were a lot of people you met. Like, you were always gigging. Like, for me, I was just like, okay, I got to get better. Because I definitely felt like definitely felt like the weakest link. So I was like, okay, I got to keep practicing. I'm not like focusing on getting gigs. I just got to get better. But I saw you and other friends getting gigs and doing their thing. So you were already, when you got out of MI, you were still doing that hustle. And so what went on after that? After MI, what was like? So I guess like 2014.
I joined the band Mammoth with Wes, which is now called Thrailkill.
Hopefully
Wes
we'll have him
Thrailkill.
on the podcast.
And this incredible Turkish drummer from Germany joined Aliar Kinik, and he had us playing like what felt like 2 to 3 days a week for at least a year, which we would never do now or didn't, and we burned ourselves out. But I miss those days because my playing and my live chops and my groove with
Your timing and everything.
with 2 other guys, it was better than it's ever been, and those were really great times, and I miss playing out a lot, especially during these quarantine times. And then I was working at SIR and this violin shop on Sunset.
And what's SIR for the people listening?
That's Studio Instrument Rentals. It's like one of the main instrument rental and rehearsal room facilities in.
And they rent out to like
States.
all the biggest artists. Like, whenever you see someone using gear that's not there at a venue like Hollywood Bowl, Rose Bowl, whatever it may be, they're usually renting equipment from SIR.
Yeah.
And that's Chase that's lugging the equipment in for them.
Oftentimes. And then this some friends and affiliates from my old university in Canada approached me to join this band called Oni, which I ended up doing for like 2 to 3 years. No, 3 years.
But how was everything with Mammoth going at the time? Because I know you opened for Mr. Big.
Yeah, we opened. Well, that was maybe a year after that, but things were going pretty good. We had a lot of momentum. We recorded 2 EPs that were growing creatively and sounding better.
Yeah. And then one of them I can't even find. Your first one, the one with the mammoth on it.
Polymorphism.
Yeah, Polymorphism. I was trying to find
I'll give you a copy.
Yeah.
Before you leave.
Because I went on Spotify and stuff the other week trying to find it, and I could only find the Thrailkill stuff.
Oh man.
Yeah.
No, I think it's up there, but
I mean, I think I found some mammoth stuff, but it wasn't the earlier stuff. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry. Continue.
Things were going well, and then I was approached by some friends to join this band, which was awesome, and those were also really good times. We recorded 2 albums in the Cayman Islands at this really awesome studio, and then that came to an end, and I went back to.
How was that experience though? I mean, I know you were flying on private jets. Like, you got to record 1 or 2 albums.
We recorded 2 albums.
Yeah.
We went on tour with some of my favorite bands ever, like Children of Bodom and Gojira. We worked with guys like Randy Bly, Josh Wilbur. Really amazing, awesome experiences. Amazing crew from Deftones to we were working with this guy from Aerosmith. His name was Haystack, and he was a hell of a guy. We met so many amazing people through that, and
Yeah.
I definitely miss those times a lot. But it was kind of crazy, and it ended naturally, I think.
Just move the mic a little closer. That way you're not like trying to, or like,
And yeah,
that way you can. There you go. It's more comfortable.
after that, I made sure that I secured my visa so I could stay here and continue working. And one night, so I was out of Oni, and I wasn't really in any major band at the time, and I was sitting at home.
And how was the success of Mammoth? Because you had left Mammoth, or you were not leaving Mammoth, because I know Wes was helping with like the band, like with guitar lessons and stuff like that. And then so like you were still in Mammoth, who is now Thrailkill, doing stuff with them. You were still doing things with Oni and doing all these tours and stuff. But so like how was everything going with that? Or how was there anything where you were like, you know what, I don't feel musically satisfied? Because you were saying, oh, now I miss it, even though it got hard. But it's like, so what was the turning point? Were there things pushing against each other? Was it just, you know, where did that part fall apart and then the new chapter begin?
That's tough to say. I think to work with my friends from school in Oni and the opportunities, I just couldn't turn my back on that. I had to pursue it, and I had to say goodbye to Mammoth. And it was I didn't want to leave, and Wes didn't want me to leave at the time. But then Yas Sutaka came in on bass, who was an total virtuoso, and he did great.
Hopefully he'll say what's up too.
And then, but I did miss it, like playing in a fierce trio like that, then where there was no strings attached and everything was just natural and organic and raw. Like that's a rare thing, and you want to keep it going, but it rarely does, because of such intense personalities like Wes and Aliar, myself, all of us. We're all
you were all
artists. We're all
have
kind of
your
insane.
Things, yeah.
So it is what it is, whatever that means. And I eventually came back. I've worked with Wes since. We're recording some more stuff, which I'm excited about. But he called me saying that they were playing a show with Yas at Old Town Pub in Pasadena, and if I would come down and play one song. And I was sitting at home, like I might have been burnt out or something, and I was like, I'm not going to go all the way to Pasadena just to play one song. And I thought, dude, you got nothing else going on. Like, you love playing with them. Go, show up. And I sat down and I really warmed up, and I went to Old Town Pub, and I was like sitting in the back, like making sure I played well, even though there was like maybe 15 people less in the bar. I went up and played that one song. I killed it, and I walked down, and the drummer for Warbringer was there, and he just said, "What's up?" And that was that. And then like maybe a month or so later, and it was like a week or two after I'd quit Oni, Carlos Cruz called me and asked if I would fill in for a tour, and who knows from there. And I've been playing in Warbringer now for almost 2 years, and really love those dudes.
Off that one moment.
If I'd stayed home, it wouldn't have happened. So many great things have happened since then. I'm so grateful to have met those guys, and I've released a record with them, Weapons of Tomorrow by Warbringer. From that one moment. So like you can't, ever rest on your laurels. You gotta get out there.
Well, bro, like something that I got out of everything you said, because it's something that I've seen in you a lot, is like, where the hell do you get that voice in your head? Because you always have that, like, man, like you always like think something negative, and then you have that voice in your head that says something positive. While most people, it's the other way around. They have someone that beats them down. So I'm like, where do you get that? Whether it's like, watching old Batman movies, because I know that's influenced you, or even more recently watching Dragon Ball, or like where do you get that code of ethic? Your father? I don't know what it could be, but I'm just curious about that.
I appreciate that. Honestly, well, trust me, the voice that beats me down is there. And it's aggressive. I gotta watch out for that a lot.
But see, that other voice is why you have so much success in your career. You know what I mean? Like, you're always like, yes. Like, I remember when I met you, you would apologize for apologizing. Because you were like, man, it's really difficult for me to say no. You always said yes, to everything. And I mean, it opened a lot of doors to you. Also opened some crappy ones. But the older you got and the more advantage you got, the more you were like, oh, this is something I should do. Because
Yeah, no, I appreciate that a lot. I owe that a lot of that to my mom. My mom really was a positive person and told me all the time to see the best in others and to make the most of everything. She she would say to me, God works in mysterious ways, and in whatever way, I would always listen to that and think about it. And she would teach me if kids made fun of someone at school and I would come home and tell her about it, she'd be like, well, you don't know what it's like for that kid at home and what he's going through. And I would think about that. And a lot of other parents, didn't always tell their kids that, or maybe they did, but those
really stuck with
moments, that have helped me, I think, in the way that you're mentioning.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that. And I mean, I'm sure she'd be very proud of you if, she saw that
Thank
too.
you. I
Because,
appreciate that a lot.
yeah, man, it's definitely very, like, unique characteristic, because so many people I know are like, would just say, fuck it, it's very easy, like, I see like people like Joe Rogan and stuff like talk about like, oh, conquer your inner bitch, and like, but you do it, but in like such a positive way. It's not like you're forcing it down. It's just like, no, I'm just patting myself on the back and pushing forward,
Thanks, man. That means a lot to me. I'm trying, and sometimes.
Oh, just turn the mic a little bit.
Sometimes I do want to say fuck it, but moments like this encourage me to keep on the way that you're talking.
That's what's up, man. But like, so tell me a little bit about the road life, because something like when I was doing overseas contracts, there were certain ones where we had 2 free drinks a night, and that was what we drank before. It was like 2 Long Islands before the show, for example, and that's not an exaggeration. And I'd go up first set and feel stone cold sober, and take absinthe and feel stone cold sober. And you're playing, like, for me with you it was a little different because you were gigging to different venues. Every other night or whatever it may be, whatever your tour schedule was. I was playing to like pretty much the same crowd most nights, and it's like, man, it becomes really monotonous. They learn everything that's gonna happen, so you're like, dang, I just need a drink to get through the night. And you start learning like, oh, this is why people build these addictions on the road. So do you have any like experiences with that?
Yeah, the road can be dangerous in that way. For me, I can say personally, you can develop some good habits if you're diligent, and I would sometimes with like exercise and practice. But when you get bored and you like to party and they're giving you a case of beer minimum every day, you can obviously that just becomes a part of the routine. And when I'm at home, I wouldn't necessarily drink 6 to 10 beers every night, but when I'm on the road, that happens really easily. And then
I'm the same exact way, man.
You play 50 shows in a row. That's 500 beers. You're not feeling or looking as good 50 days later. And then if you go on tour a lot and that becomes the way it is, and you need more to keep you going and this and that, it can become dangerous big time. And you're not eating the best. You're not sleeping the best, depending on the conditions. But no, I miss being on the road a lot. And if you can be diligent and resist those things and party on the nights that are worth it and drink water and get to bed early the nights that are, which a lot of successful musicians do, then
it's chill.
It's chill. And, it can be Groundhog Day, same thing every day sometimes. But if you can appreciate moments, if you can find ways to fill the downtime.
Playing with good musicians too helps.
Playing with good musicians, exploring the cities if they're safe and worth exploring. Reading, watch movies, hang out with your friends. On tour, sometimes bandmates, and I've been guilty of it, like to keep to themselves because they get sick of each other, and it's so dumb because that's like the time that you have to spend together, and you would enjoy the time more if you would take the time to play video games and watch movies together or ask them to go on adventures. And we do, and these are the ups and downs of tour life and the pits that can happen.
Dude, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, having toured on overseas contracts with like people that I've been with for almost all of them, and people that I was just there for one contract, you see everybody, how they mesh, what's their ticks and everything. And it's like, you don't want to hire that asshole for a 6-month tour because then you're stuck with them. And it's like, bro, I don't want to as soon as I get off stage, not feel comfortable. You want to have that safe space. And if you're in a tour bus and you don't feel safe, you're like, man, what the fuck am I doing here?
You need a tight crew. If people leave stuff all over the bus, or if you're lucky to have a bus, let alone all over the van, or eating each other's food, or being messy, pissing on the seat, all that stuff, then it can get pretty toxic pretty quick, and you got to stay on that. there have been moments where I've been pretty moody on tour, and by the end of the tour, I'm like, oh God, I hope they call me back because
Yeah, and
you know,
here's
you're
something.
exposed.
Yeah. Here's something I'm curious about. This popped into my head. Like, do you feel like when you're on tour, little things become bigger things?
Definitely.
Like, here's something just kind of to wrap, like talking about the beer thing. When I was in China, we had a card, and we could go to the bar and we could order like a certain amount of drinks. Like, we could order a crate of beer. I don't know how many were in there, but it was literally a crate, at least 24 beers. And in between three of us, or sometimes four, we'd kill them easily, And on top of that, get free drinks. Like, we would have this guy who said he was the chief of police. And he would come like almost every night, or at least the weekends for sure. And he'd get a whole side of the table just full of these like Jack Daniel bottles. They were like already pre-mixed Jack and Coke, and they were like, I don't know, like $15 a pop or something. They were pretty expensive in the bar, and he just had it full. And every time, just be like, "Oh, here, drink one, just drink one," and you just keep drinking that stuff, and you just get used to it. And it's like, what day is it? Oh yeah, and you just like, it becomes a routine. It's like you wake up at noon, you eat something, you practice, you say what's up to the family back home, you go eat something before the show, and then you get fucked up. You know what I mean? And then with the whole cruise thing, yeah, let's say even on that contract, then you get the guy who always steals the card and then orders all the drinks to himself, and then you're like, I got to get the card before this guy.
Oh, brutal.
You know what I mean? Something as simple as that, or the guy who talks behind your back, and it's like I have to go on stage with these guys and live with them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you like start becoming an alcoholic or doing drugs,
just make sure the mic's pointing right
and
there.
and doing drugs and stuff, you got to really watch that, because you're around your friends, colleagues, and workers, and you're trying to be professional. It's not a party all the time.
But people treat it that way, and they become divas.
Oh yeah, they totally do. And I try hard to make sure that I don't myself. And yeah, little things become big things. Certain musicians I've worked with fart a lot. And it sounds funny now, but it becomes not funny on tour. But then you're like, well, I don't want to quit the band because this guy farts all the time. But 50 days into a tour, you start thinking about it.
Yeah, because it's like something you have to live with, man. And like, I've had to deal with alcoholics and drug addicts and stuff, or like people who are like, hey man, do you know where to get coke? And I'm like, man, in this country they kill you for that. I'm good.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You're in a different state where certain things are illegal, and certain band members don't want to respect or honor that, and they'll take down the whole ship if something happens.
100%.
You're putting yourself on the line, and yeah, there's nowhere to hide really, which is fine. Like, not that I need to hide, but I can be I'm an introvert and need that daily space. And if I'm having a rough day, and you're around the whole crew every single day, and you gotta perform in front of people, sometimes that can be really rough. But you got to push through or find ways.
Yeah, and that helps you find out why, like, even like the Beatles or something can break up as a band. It's like, because you're literally married to these people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yep, and in a good band, it should be like a good marriage, I guess, or some sort of open
but
relationship.
it's hard when you have 7 people. And like, I don't know if you probably haven't had this, because most of the metal bands you've dealt with are all males. But like, I've had bands where people are fucking each other in the band, and then you make rules. So then like $1,000 if you fuck somebody, and
that would just make me want to do it more.
Yeah, exactly. And then like, you try to bargain with them when it happens.
Wow, I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, no, it's like the overseas circuit. Some other stuff, man. Something I noticed with French Canadians, I don't know how it is in Canada, just a quick side note, but all the French Canadians on the circuit love to do cocaine. Like, that's their thing.
Wow.
And I'm just like, is that a thing in French Canada and Montreal out there?
Well, I've
Quebec?
never lived out there. I have seen it out there, but I'm sure there's pockets of that everywhere.
Yeah, it was just really weird
interesting.
that all these overseas musicians that were from Montreal were all just like, let's do coke, and I'm like, I'm good.
That's funny.
Yeah, I don't know. Every country had its thing, man. But so bro, like, just tell me about your weekend, bro. You were before the podcast started. You were telling me like you went to the Sequoia.
Went to the Sequoia Forest with 4 other musicians.
One of them was Yas.
One of them was Yasutaka. Yep. It was my first time going to that forest, and it was absolutely incredible, especially after being in a quarantine and being kind of staying in the same area and in my room for months, to go out and being in a forest, like it would takes like days or a whole day. I don't know the exact size of it, but it seemed like endless. It just takes forever to go through. Was so inspiring.
Like you're on Endor, literally where they filmed it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, that totally makes sense. It did feel like that. And being around those trees that are like 2,000 years old.
Did you see the biggest tree, the old tree?
Yeah, General
Yeah.
Sherman.
Yeah.
Incredible. Like those have been around through everything, and just shows you how fast your own life is. And there was like, I took comfort knowing how long that had been before I came, and how much longer it'll be after I'm gone. And like,
What'd you guys bring to eat? Because I know you guys camped and stuff. Like, what'd you guys do?
We brought a barbecue and 2 coolers full of like burgers, bacon, short ribs, a bunch of veggies, cherries, beers, scotch, rye, vodka.
Oh, that's what's up.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really. We ate all the
cannabis
food,
or anything?
smoked salmon, cannabis.
That's what's
we
up.
brought some mushrooms.
Yeah?
Ate some mushrooms. Yeah,
That's what's
it was-
up,
it was
man. You
beautiful.
guys, did you all do it or just some of you?
We all did it. Yep.
Oh,
at the same
okay.
time in the day, and it lasted about 6 hours. I was
On your first day?
second day.
Okay.
I was laughing my ass off. It was so beautiful because there were so many thoughts that weren't even funny, but I would laugh because you just see things in a different light, and you realize, I don't know, it's hard to put into words, really. But I want to live the truth that I felt in those woods, because it was so beautiful, and all the like
It was real to you.
anxieties and apprehensions of society and modern life were gone. And then you come out of it and you go back into it, and you realize that this society and our cell phones are all actively trying to like take that energy from you. And if you can,
Like your
harness
natural
it,
vibe.
yeah, like I was like so high, but I felt more sober than ever, because I was thinking so clearly, and I wasn't like all wrapped up
It's like,
in all of the bullshit that you think is important, but it's just not at all. And I want to think and feel that way all the time. But like I said, I can already feel the bullshit, the tropes of society and modern life seeping back in, and trying to like
is that
keep my
just
head
like
clear.
reality of the situation of what it is?
I don't know. And also, a big help too was in those woods, we had 0 service on our cell phones whatsoever, and I couldn't
Which
look
is
at my
awesome.
phone for
Yeah.
2 days. When's the last time you woke up and didn't look at your cell phone, and then scroll through 50 to 100 things on Instagram that just leave your brain scrambled when you just woke up, and then you're supposed to get up and like have a productive day and not feel all sorts of ways, and then you're on your phone the rest of the day anyways. I am.
Do you think like something I want to go to in a second, but like, do you think social media, like this type of stuff, is like, we're gonna look at it like how we look at lobotomies? Like, what the fuck were we thinking with this
I hope
stuff?
so.
Because it looks like, to me, it's like cancer, man.
I hope so, because I'm stuck in it too, and I put more energy recently into like these 1-minute videos that I'm the only person that really gives a shit about it, but I have to do it to keep my things up, whatever that means. Instead of like making real art or like
That
a
you
full
love.
song or an
Mhm.
album like people used to, and that they didn't have to worry about that, and I don't have
That's
to
why I
worry
did this
about it.
podcast, man.
Yeah.
Just something I want to do for fun.
So, and if you can figure that out, then it's not necessarily a horrible thing, but most people don't, and from what I've seen,
Mhm.
this just that takes over, and most people spend their time.
Yeah, it's like that has more
On that.
value than like the perspective you have. Like, for example, that we were talking about earlier about you being like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna get up and do it anyways. That kind of thing. That has more value than any person I meet with 1 million followers. You know what I mean? But society is saying no, the 1 million is more important.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, bro. It's like when you look at, a nice car. It's like, yeah, it's flashy, it's cool, maybe it serves you, but most of the time it's usually an ego thing. Versus when you have a truck, it's like, this truck has value. Maybe it's not the prettiest thing, but if your pretty car breaks down, who are you gonna call to tow it?
Truck.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like looking at things as having value. But I don't know.
Yeah,
Just a
no,
little
I hear
side
you.
note,
Totally. Yeah. No, it's beautiful.
But something like you were telling me when we were talking about the whole camping trip was, it's like, it's super nice, like, to be out. And you were talking about this a little bit earlier too. Just you're away from all this bullshit and you have clarity. And it's like, bro, like, and that's the thing. Like, even you and me just sitting across from each other, it's like, oh, it's COVID. freaking Black Lives Matter, all this crazy stuff's going down. But it's like, man, I'm enjoying my time. We're just chilling outside. Like, the weather's great in Los Angeles. Like, I can't complain, you know. And we're sitting outside, and it's pretty quiet, even though it was pretty loud earlier. But what I have to say is, like, we've been having talks about, like, because of this whole COVID thing and how it's slapped basically everything, you know, because the two things I think what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about it that last week or 2 weeks ago was the biggest thing is pay cut. You know, everything's a pay cut. Some businesses, like being a musician, are hit a lot harder, and you're like, man, maybe I should go to Canada and move away. And I'm like, man, maybe that would help you just also clear your mind from the bullshit, you know? I don't know what you've been thinking about that, especially with this mushroom trip, if it helps give you that clarity, if you got any messages or anything, because you said what you felt was real to you, and I'm like, from what I've seen, you listen to your gut, you know, it hasn't been wrong so far, you know? Like your instinct that you have, that voice or whatever it is. So I'm like, what is it telling you right now? What are you thinking? How are you seeing things? Or could all of this COVID and all this stuff be a cloud that's just shrouding what it is that you want in life, you know?
Well, you know, the quarantine thing, and I hope for most people, and I think it has forced everyone to ask what makes them happy, what it's all about, because you're taken out of the hustle and bustle of what you think's important and what you're waiting to continue once things go back to normal, if they ever do. I'm sure they will, but you know what I'm saying. Anyways, I don't know. As a musician and being on an artist visa where I'm only allowed to work in a music-related field, if things don't go back to normal, I would definitely consider moving back to Canada. And the way that I felt in the woods, in the Sequoia Woods, was so peaceful, and I know that I could, you know, go live that way for a little while up there, but I don't want to leave Los Angeles. I love it here so much. I want to continue my music career here and for a long time. Moving forward, but it's just a kind of a crazy time, and there's definitely that feeling of like, oh, should I get out while I still can, whatever that means, or do I want to survive this? And like, I'm not going to let anything change how I feel, where I'm at right now. Like, I can stand my ground. It's whatever.
Yeah, I feel that, man.
Terms that's going under. So I'm kind of torn in between the two. It's not like I would be fleeing or anything. It's just I don't want to leave, and I don't want COVID to be the reason I leave. However, maybe it would be smart to economically, and based on my passport and all that stuff.
Because I'm sure you have a lot of friends, just like I do, that moved out of LA, moved back home to live with their parents or Texas.
A lot of people have been, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of, because it's just like, hey, it's so expensive to live here. There's no work, and I'm like, I had a friend who was local to my hometown in Bakersfield, where Korn is from. Speaking of Korn, but
hell yeah, hell yeah.
He his band booked a tour in Texas, and they had all their shows sold out, and then the next day they shut down Texas. And I'm like,
brutal.
You know, it's like, and he was thinking about maybe I'll move to Texas, you know, like to keep doing my thing, because that's just what he's trying to live off of, and it's not a lot, but it's enough to pay the bills. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. Because it just seems like everything's going to be shut down for the rest of the year.
Yeah, we were supposed to go on. Warbringer was supposed to go on tour with Havoc last May, and I was really looking forward to that. And we released this new album so that we were going to tour it, go on the whole cycle as you would. And that got canceled, and I have no idea when we'll go on tour again, or what it'll look like when we do. Excuse me.
Bless you. But I know my friend Michael Zamora. You remember him? He went to MI.
Yep, I remember.
He was doing a tour. He was in the middle of a tour that he started in February, and then in March, you know, everything went down, and he was in Europe, so they had to shut down the tour.
Oh man.
And I'm like, hey, there's so many people that happened. Or my other friend, a great drummer, CJ. He literally just booked his first tour. Was supposed to leave in April, and then
Swedish. CJ?
No.
Okay.
He's a black dude.
I'm so glad.
I hope you meet him. He's dope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to. I went and saw Thundercat at the Wiltern, and it was one of the sickest shows I've ever seen. Completely sold out. Like, such a fun night, such amazing musicianship and visuals. And he was on this tour, and I'm like, man, this guy is doing everything right. This tour is going to be so amazing. And then, like, a week later, it was canceled, and I was just thinking, like, what a shame it is but
Yeah.
I understand. I just don't know what to think, and I'm extremely skeptical.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I mean, it is what it is.
That's the name of the Thundercat album tour that he was on.
Yeah, it is what it is. That
Yeah.
makes sense, man. Freaking
Yeah, they
phrase
were probably saying that a
of
lot.
the year,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, but
maybe he knew.
right? Packing a little bowl right now, getting it down, bro. But yeah, that's just like something I've been really curious about, because I've been like curious what my friends are doing, my really close ones, like, hey, are you guys gonna be here or not? Because I'm like, it's tough. Like even like Yaz, I'm like, I don't know what you're doing, bro, because you were just with music. You know what I mean? All the people who just focusing on music. That's what where I'm like, I don't know. Especially when you're not a citizen and you don't have a stimulus check to rely on. At this point, most people have already wasted it.
Well, I feel very fortunate that I was working at SIR and was able to qualify for unemployment. But the way I look at it, and I'm not a citizen of here, so I don't know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm on a visa where I can only work in music. I was working in music. I was put on furlough by that company and was entitled to unemployment so that I could continue to live here. Because if I moved back to Canada, I wouldn't necessarily be receiving those benefits because I haven't been a taxpayer there for the past 8 years. So this is where I live. This is where I'm working. That's how it worked out for me, and I'm very fortunate and so appreciative to the state of California and the system that they set up here so that I could receive that.
Mm-hmm. And talking about let's go back and talk about the LA scene a little bit, just like your thoughts on it. But just seeing how so many businesses are closing down because of COVID, how, obviously musicians will find new places to play and stuff, but I'm curious how that's going to affect the scene. But what'd you think of the scene before, like getting to know people and everything, going to jams, because I know we would go to 77 together. We would go to the Federal, and then what was the other one on Mondays?
Super Soul Monday. Dirty Laundry.
Yeah, and then the other one on Mondays. But that's okay.
There was like a jazz one downtown, but I actually never went to that.
The Juice Joint.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't go to that one? Okay. But
I wanted to.
What were you saying though? Sorry. So
I love that part about the LA scene. That was one of my favorite parts is you can go and see some of the most incredible musicians in the planet, on my opinion.
Piano Bar.
Piano Bar was like the legacy. It used to be every Wednesday and Friday, and that place got torn down, and that was West Coast Get Down in like their earliest form from what I've ever experienced with them, and it was so incredible and shaping like all of these incredible artists that are out now continuing to do what they do. But these jam nights, that was like just changed me. I came from just being like into prog metal and guitar virtuosos to watching Kamasi Washington shred my face off and hearing him turn these arpeggios inside out in a way that I'd never heard, and that got me into jazz. Like I completely was into jazz, and you would have never heard that in London, Ontario, where I'm from, and just on a Wednesday and Friday night. So that's one of the biggest examples of how moving away from a smaller town.
Yeah, you see everything
really,
for free.
Yeah,
and like high quality.
It's free. They would tour the world and charge.
Yeah, like Stanley Randolph at the Dirty Laundry.
Dirty Laundry, yeah.
Who plays for Stevie Wonder?
And these musicians are just hanging around. This is like their hang, and you're a part of that if you're there every night, whether you're jamming or not. Like you can be a part of that scene, and that's so incredible. And I love that so much, and I miss that so much. And I hope that comes back more than anything. However, in a city like LA, it can also be very tough. It's so big, and there's so many places, and sometimes scenes are hard to start or stay together in such a widespread place. Mm-hmm. Like to start a scene.
Yeah.
And there have been some of the greatest scenes of all time coming out of this city,
and to keep it going, because it's usually a like melting pot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing is, everybody keeps coming here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but what do you think? Sorry, what was I gonna say? Sorry, were you gonna finish your thought?
No, that's about it.
No, I was just thinking something you were saying earlier, about about the LA scene, and then you were talking about oh yeah, like all the musicians that were coming in and out, right? But see, like you were saying, like okay, here you have like West Coast Get Down, right? Who are these amazing musicians who went on, like I think the bass player went on to play for like Chicoria, right? The guy with the afro.
Yep. Carlos or Carlitos, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I can't remember his last name, but incredible.
Right. You have all these people, right, who are, phenomenal musicians. We're not, or at 77, like Xavier, who was touring with Toto before COVID.
Who the first time I met him, he was playing at the church gig that I was lucky to be playing at for years. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I see him at 77, and now he's in Ghost Note and he's playing for Toto, and I'm like, I got to play with this guy at my gig by chance because I live in LA.
Yeah.
That to me, that's
it's something
like,
that doesn't happen.
There's no other way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, it usually doesn't happen anywhere else.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what I was gonna ask is, you have these amazing musicians, but none of them have like their own music. You know what I mean? Like, so something that I've heard from like this one musician, this older musician that I really respect a lot, that toured with big artists, is he's like, I gigged for all these years, and all I have to show for it is stories, because it's like you just get used up. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, Xavier has all these gigs, but it's like, where I don't know. I mean, he could have. I don't know. But I shouldn't have even said Xavier. But just say anybody, right? Who has all these gigs? Who it's like, I'm not knocking it. Like it's amazing. It's incredible. They're amazing musicians. But at the end of the day, when they hit 40, 50, it's like you don't have anything to show for it, really. You don't have like publishing rights to these songs, or so. There are some musicians who go into the production side of it, or who go into production or writing songs and then become big, like Bruno Mars or something. But it's just like how, like, you don't see a lot of these guys going out and doing that. You know what I mean?
Well, it depends. If I think there's a lot of musicians, and I certainly feel this way sometimes, where playing the gig is more what they're into. Like they're not songwriters as much. But the ones that are, I find, usually do write their songs, whether it gains popularity and becomes a solo artist or not, and they have that on their belt, determines whether it's received a certain way or if they are able to release it. But I totally hear what you're saying. Yeah,
but do you think it becomes that way? Because, like, for example, just like you, I was also super into Dream Theater, and I was like, oh, they went to music school, and I saw like a guitar magazine that had Paul Gilbert on it, and saw MI, very similar, funny enough, but like, we're inspired. Like, I'm like, yo, I'm gonna start this progressive metal band, go to music school, and meet these people, and try to do that thing. Like that's how I'm going in. But then how I come out is, oh, I'm this guy trying to hustle so I can get hired for the gig.
Right.
Where does that change come in? Because it's like, hey, we come in, we're still creative people, because it's like, yeah, we're still creating on stage, like playing with each other and playing solos and playing underneath each other, there's still a lot of creativity going on, but it stops being about having our own like seed to plant and grow. It starts being about watering other people's plants.
Well, if you're trying to gig for your rent, it can become that really quickly, because you don't have time or money to invest in your own art, and
you don't get paid enough to do
your
it.
Own band, exactly. And that happens a lot. And then they're like used up, and they'd been playing other people's projects, just jumping around from gig to gig, and never really establishing their own legacy, because they didn't have the time or money to play in a project that they really loved, or release their own art, or have a collaborative project, which it happens to a lot of musicians. And there's a lot of musicians that made it that luck, they would all, I'm sure they'd all say luck had a big factor, but not to say that they didn't deserve it and aren't really talented.
Yeah, because I have a friend that I'm playing video games with right now, just to leave him anonymous, but he's an amazing bass player, and he plays with a friend of mine on a gig, and like he was just like praising him. I'll tell you after the podcast who it is, but like he was praising him, saying like, he's the best reader I've ever seen, can do all these crazy things, blah blah blah. And he's like, and he's an older guy, but right now, you know, he was asking when we were playing video games together the other day. He was asking me like, he was like, yeah, I'm a security guard right now to pay the bills. And he's like asking me about becoming a security guard, and I'm like, this amazing, you know, virtuosic bass player, you know, who can like sight read anything, do whatever, play funk like the hell out of it. And it's like he's asking to be a security guard. It's like you don't have anything to show for everything, and I understand. That's going back to what my friend said. It's like it's a tough gig, man. You really got to do it for the love of it, and that's what I see so many people do. That's why I see so many people drop out because they don't have.
If I want to have a family or start any of that, like I got to go like become an electrician or something on the side.
Yeah.
Or get an amazing gig that pays really well, but even those gigs right now, they're all suffering big time because they can't play live. Streaming music is the main way everyone listens to music these days, and artists are not getting compensated fairly for it whatsoever, but that's no new thing.
Yeah. It's like, it's very difficult to get compensated for what we do. But I mean, and then when we do charge a lot, they're like, well, what? And it's like, well, they don't see like how Chase used to sit in his room 8 hours a day practicing that one Dance of Eternity lick like over and over and over again. It's like, bro, the amount like.
So I could move from home to all the way over here, which not that I'm complaining.
And I mean, not a lot of people can say like, hey, like I toured and stuff based off this skill that I have, you know.
Thanks, man.
So I'm like, I'm not knocking any of it. It's just like it just sucks, especially with what's going on with COVID, that it like hits everybody like a truck.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
depending on how old you are, it's gonna hit you in a different type of way.
Right.
You know?
I know. I'm feeling that at 33. So I can only imagine how the other musicians might feel right now.
Mm-hmm.
But no one should give up because we're all needed. We're all artists, and this world needs that more than ever. And when things go back to normal, we're going to be there on stage doing what we can, bringing what we can to this world to make it a better place. On top of many other ways.
Oh yeah, people will never get tired of live music whatsoever. You know, there's always going to be like, you know, a craving for it because people like feel that energy. I'm sure like I've definitely felt it, you know, when you give it out and like you get it back and everything, especially between musicians. Like that's the best feeling.
Yeah.
You know, you pull a lick or you do something and then it's like, oh my God, this guy noticed, you know?
Yeah.
So,
that's sick. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so that's the best shit ever, man.
Yeah, I can't wait to play again, especially with the Warbringer dudes. Like when we would just get together for a rehearsal before a tour, and we hadn't played in months. And that first rehearsal, that feeling, I was like, "Oh shit!" Like there's a power here. Like it feels so good, and I haven't felt that in so long. I miss that. I want that. It's empowering, and then you get to go and play that in front of people that love it. And you
get along with them off stage too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, bro, like you're firing on all
age.
cylinders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's a core unit. It's very tight. Those dudes are awesome.
Well, I dig, and man, I know you did some recording with the guitarist from Ohm.
Yeah, Chris Poland.
Or AKA he played guitar for Megadeth.
That was I'm so happy and fortunate to have been able to work with him on these 3 songs.
And that's because through how?
The drummer from Warbringer, Carlos Cruz, plays in Ohm, and he said that he was shopping Ohm out to some labels, and they wanted to hear another Chris Poland album, but you know, a little more heavy and in like the vein of Megadeth. And I think the bassist from Ohm maybe wasn't interested, or I'm not sure what, but Carlos asked me if I was down, and I obviously was over the moon to do that. And I think that it went really well and was like a great fit. An amazing trio, like vibe. I loved that. It was really awesome. I missed that. Mm-hmm. And I hope that we get to do some more for sure.
Yeah, man. Well, bro, it's been almost an hour, bro. So I think we're going to call it quits on this podcast. Maybe we can go grab something to eat or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thanks, man. This has been another episode of the DP Podcast, man. Double penetrating your skull to both ears with Chase Bryant. What's good, bro?
Thanks for having me, bro.
Peace out, man.
Peace out.